This video is going to be about the importance of warm-up exercises for beginner artists, which is going to help you improve your art. This is a warm-up exercise that I did recently, and as I continue drawing, you're going to see how I do these warm-ups and why they're so helpful. So as you can see, I'm starting with simple shapes. This exercise is to do with anatomy, but I still recommend whatever you're drawing to start with these kind of shapes. And essentially, I'm not putting any pressure on the drawing, just trying to get a few simple ideas out, which is why these exercises are so important. I then move into a different drawing style where I don't use any guidelines, I just go straight into the drawing. Again, I don't have a specific pose that I'm thinking of, but I'm trying to use the lines before to infer what I'm going to draw next. This is kind of important for warm-up exercises because it stops you from overthinking, and even if it turns out bad, you know that this is just for warm-ups, and you know that if you want to improve, all you need to do is use this warm-up as a reference for your next drawing, and you can simply put in some more details, and that's a simple way of improving. You can then combine two types of drawing techniques together using guidelines first, and then going in with more detail with the guidelines there. I think this is a good way of kind of making sure that you can visualize first what you want to do, and then you can kind of think about the more specific details later on. This is all about making sure that you know how to get an idea out of your head and onto paper, which can be very difficult at times if you don't know what you're drawing. Then, this is probably where you should start to look up references. Now that you've kind of warmed up, you're more likely to utilize the reference that you're looking at rather than trying to copy it one-to-one. You're looking at the specific shapes that you're supposed to use. It doesn't need to look one-to-one, but essentially you're going to learn more just from warming up without the reference first. Here is where you may want to use the drawing that you've just done to make another reference. Trying to draw it instead of from an actual real photo, using your own drawing as a reference. You also may want to start to draw that particular pose or photo or reference from a different angle to see if you can kind of change the shapes and translate them into different perspectives and angles. So this is where you start to think about the time you're taking to draw. The drawings before maybe were 1 or 2 minutes, very quick, but you also want to take your time with certain sketches as well in these warm-ups so that you can kind of put in a bit more detail and start to think a bit more about what you actually want to draw. Some things you may want to think about are shading, things like line weight, the type of sketching style you're using. Are you using continuous strokes, line strokes, or are you using a kind of chicken scratch type of drawing? Either way is good as long as you kind of feel comfortable with it. And you know, you don't need to keep with one style throughout the whole sketch. You can kind of change it up depending on how it's feeling. This is why it is a warm-up page and not an actual sketch, I guess. So try that a few times. You can try this with and without references. I suggest maybe doing it with a reference first and then doing it by yourself. I think the reason why this usually works is just because the confidence you get from drawing from that reference and then drawing out of your imagination straight after, the skills that you've just learned or practiced kind of translate really well on your own drawings. Again, you can see that I'm looking at things like shading and where those kind of black spaces should be. So just taking a few pieces of advice from the reference I've used and kind of just put them in my own sketches and drawings that I've done from my imagination. And like I've said before, there's no specific way this should look. You can go back and forth between references and imagination. You can focus on certain features. So now here I'm trying to draw just the face on its own without any of the body, which is also something that's kind of fun to do because you can now be a bit more specific, build your details on particular parts of your drawing, which when you're referencing and maybe when you take your drawings a bit more seriously and you're out of this warm-up stage, you kind of know how to think about it. But just to recap, when it comes to these warm-up exercises, try to use references, try to use your imagination, don't put too much pressure on the drawings, and have fun.